Good morning. I am going to now go through the video with you on solving equations with variables on each side. This is our fourth lesson in Chapter 2, and it introduces us to equations that look a little different and maybe a little scarier than what we're used to, but definitely within the reach of what we are able to do. And I did say good morning, but if you're watching this in the evening or afternoon, I hope that's good as well. So we're gonna work on this by just diving right into these, and I'm gonna talk you through these as we do them, and I hope that you leave this with a decent understanding of what we have to do. All right, so if you look at this first equation, all right, what's different about this is that we are used to moving constants around from one side to the other in order to get variables on one side and then all of our numbers on the other side. This is really no different. The only difference is that we're just moving something with a variable attached to it, but they move the same way. We add and subtract them to move them to the other side. And the one trick that I try to teach people is, if it's possible to, always try to move your variables to the side where there is more of the variables. So if you look at this first one we're looking at here, I'm going to put on my highlighter. Here are my coefficients, right? I've got a 4 and I've got a 5. And then ask yourself which one's bigger. Well, 5 is bigger than 4. They're both positive, so 5 is larger than 4. So what the smartest thing you can do for most of these is to say, okay, then I'm going to move the 4 over to the other side where there's more of them. So the way you would do that is you would do the opposite of it. So if it's adding 4d, you would subtract 4d, which you should be somewhat familiar with now from doing these problems. You know what? I'm gonna try to go all Sal Khan here and use some different colors. So we're going to subtract 4d from both sides. And when we do that, that gives us d over here. You could write 1d, but 1d is the same thing as d. So we'll just do that. Cancels out our 4d's, and it leaves us with 8. And so we went from an equation that looked really difficult to something that solved really quickly. And then when it says check your solution, it just means take 8 and substitute it back in the equation wherever you see a d. So you have 8 plus 4 times 8 equals 5 times 8. Well, 8 plus 32 equals, and then 5 times 8 is 40. 8 plus 32 is 40, so you get 40 equals 40, and this worked out nicely. Okay, we will continue to do a few more of these. They're going to progressively get a little stranger, but that's okay. All right, now let's look at this one. So I want you to try this one on your own. So pause the video and then come on back. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's put up our fence. I have variables on each side. If I look at them, the 8 is larger than the 5, so I'm going to move my 5 over to the side where there's more of it. So we're going to subtract 5a from both sides, cancels out over here and leaves you with 21. And then here, 8a minus 5a gives you 3a's. So it's like 8 groups of a, you take 5 away, you get 3 groups left. Then you just do your division, because we want a by itself and with a coefficient of 1. And so you divide by whatever the coefficient is. So a equals, and then you do the same thing to the other side. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Let's put that in the equation real quick and see what we get. Well, if we have 8 times 7 equals 5 times 7 plus 21. Well, 8 times 7 is 56. I'm just going to work on top here, work kind of backwards. 35 plus 21, and then 35 plus 21 is 56. And these two are equal to each other, which means that we're good. All right, let's look at a new kind of problem, but using the same concepts. So now what we have is we not only have variables on both sides, but we have numbers on both sides. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're just going to do one more step of it. I usually start with the variables when I do this. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. I would just suggest doing it one way and kind of getting in the habit of doing it one way in order to develop that habit. So I'm going to look at my coefficients. I've got a 6 and a 4. 6 is larger than 4. So let's subtract the 4n from both sides. And that gives you 2n minus 1 equals negative 5. And so now I want to move this over to the other side as well. So I'm going to do it by adding the opposites. So plus 1, plus 1. Then you get 2n is equal to, well, negative 5 plus 1 is, if you're at negative 5 on a number line, right? If you're at negative 5 and you add 1, you go this way. Well, you got to remember that the numbers go like that until you get to 0. So your answer is negative 4. Divide by 2, because I want to know what one group of n is, not 2. So n equals negative 2. And then if I put negative 2 into this, and I'll try to do this off to the side. So 6 times negative 2 minus 1 is going to be negative 12 minus 1, which is negative 13. And then if I do the 4n part, I'll go 4 times negative 2 minus 5. So negative 8 minus 5. And in case you don't remember, that's the same as this. Negative 8 plus negative 5. That's negative 13. And you have a negative 13 here, and you have a negative 13 there. So our answer looks good. All right, you try. Your turn. I'll write it out nice and large for you, and then pause the video and try this problem. Okay, we have 3x minus 7 equals 8x plus 23. So what side is my variable larger? The 8x side. So we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. That leaves you with 5x over on the right side. We still have that 23 over here. Here my 3x is canceled. And don't forget that that negative sign belongs to that negative 7. So bring that down with it. So negative 7 equals 5x plus 23. Then let's subtract 23 from both sides. And if you have negative 7 minus 23, that's the same thing as negative 7 plus negative 23. So just add them up and keep the common sign. So negative 30. And then divide both sides by 5 to get your x by itself. And then you get x is equal to negative 6. And if I put negative 6 in both sides, let's look at this one. I'm just going to talk you through it. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. Minus 7 is negative 25. If you do the right side, 8 times negative 6 is negative 48 plus 23. So you do that as 48 minus 23, which gives you 25. And then you keep the sign of the larger number, which is this one, the number with the larger absolute value. So negative 25. So that equals that, and we're good. Okay, let's look at, I think we have 2 more problems to look at. Green's Gym charges a one-time fee of $50 plus $30 per session for a personal trainer. So for Green's Gym, all right, you would figure out what you would owe. That's your $50, and then every time you go, it's $30 per session. So we'll just say that X is the number of sessions. So if you do 1 session, it's 50 plus 30, which is $80. If you do 2 sessions, well, the session total would be 60 plus your $50 one-time fee, right? So that's how that works. And then the new place charges a yearly fee of $250 plus $10 for each session with the trainer. So 10 times X, all right? So a much higher fee, right? But it's just $10 a session. So it says, for how many sessions is the cost of the 2 plans the same? This is a pretty common type of problem. And people actually will figure stuff like this out. They'll say, well, how many of what do I have to buy in order for it to be equal to this other one? So you set it up, and so basically we want to know, when is this going to be equal to that? So we're going to write that out exactly like this and figure out when that is. So when is greens, which is over here, equal to the new fitness center right here. So same deal, guys. Now it's a two-step equation. We're going to treat it just like that. But oops, wrong thing. That was really weird. We are going to move our variables. First of all, 30 is larger than 10, so we're going to subtract 10x from both sides. That gives you 20x, and you still got this 50 over here. Your 10s go away, and you've got 250. So now let's get the numbers all on one side. Remember, variables on one side, numbers on the other. Minus 50, minus 50, so you get 200, 20x. If you divide both sides by 20, you would get x is equal to 10. So what that means is 10 sessions. So at 10 sessions, it's the plans basically have the same value for you. Obviously, after one session, the new place is more expensive after two. So you would have to go to the new place 10 times in order for it to be as good of a deal as greens. And then if you continued to go to the new place in the span of the same year, it would become a better deal. All right? And so that's how you figure out, do comparisons that way. All right, last problem here. So everybody's favorite, fractions. So I'm going to walk you through this and show you that it's not as bad as you think it is. So first things first, which is bigger, 2/3 x or negative 1/6 x? Well, 2/3 is bigger. 2/3 is positive and 1/6 is negative. So 1/6 is, or 2/3 is obviously bigger. So we're going to add 1/6 x to both sides. Now, when we do this, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do a little work off on the side. So we have to figure out what is 2/3 plus 1/6. All right, we got to figure that out. So in order to do that, remember we need a common denominator between the two. And so 3 and 6, the common denominator is 6. So we've got two of them with 6. We already know 1/6 is 1/6. That's already in the common denominator. But to make 2/3 into 6, you multiply 3 times 2, right? So you're going to multiply the top times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. So 4 plus 1 is 5/6. So we're going to take all of this. I will leave it there for a second. And that's going to equal 5/6 x minus 1 equals 9. Now, hopefully you've got this all written down. I'm going to get rid of this so that I have some room to work, because I'm going to need it, because fractions take up a lot of space. Next, for variables on one side, numbers on the other. The variables are consolidated, the numbers are not, so let's do that by adding 1 to each side, because the 1 is negative, so we do the opposite. So you have 5/6 x equals 10. So remember, when you have a fractional coefficient, you always get it to 1 by multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply both sides by 6/5. And then everything over here cancels, and you get x. And then 10 times 6 is 60 over 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12. All right, so x is 12. So you're going to follow the same process when you do all of these problems, whether you're writing them or doing them with fractions or decimals or whatever they are. It's always the same process. Get the variables on one side, get the numbers on the other. Now, if you decide to put the variables on the side where there's less of them, you'll still get this, you'll wind up with the same answer. The difference is you're going to have to deal with more negatives. So if you're cool with that, you can do it wherever you want, but just the main thing is just remember you need the variables on one side, the numbers on the other. Once you have that, you have usually a division or some kind of a multiplication problem, and then you've got your answer. So good luck with these, and I hope this video was helpful to you.